Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Aloud Art. Today we're reading aloud Gulliver's Travels. Let's begin. This is the story of Lemuel Gulliver, a man who lived about 250 years ago. He studied very hard, and after many years he became a doctor. He longed to travel and loved the sea, so he became a doctor on board a sailing ship. One day, he set off on a long voyage to the South Seas on a ship called the Antelope. And here begins one of the strangest adventure stories ever told. All went well on the Antelope for the first few weeks. Then suddenly one night, a great storm sprang up. The ship hit a rock and was wrecked. Although the sea was rough and the waves high, Gulliver was such a strong swimmer that he managed to reach the shore. Completely exhausted, he dragged himself up the beach as far away from the sea as possible. He lay down on the first grassy bank he found and fell into a deep sleep. At daybreak, when he opened his eyes, he tried to sit up and look around. But he was tied to the ground. He couldn't move his arms or legs or even lift his head. Then Gulliver felt something alive running up his legs and across his chest, like a crowd of mice or several beetles perhaps. All at once, Gulliver let out a great roar of surprise. For standing on his chest were at least 40 men, each about 6 inches high. Gulliver's great roar startled the little men. Quickly, they slid down to the floor below, where great crowds of tiny people were assembled. As Gulliver tried to turn his head to look, the strings that bound his arms snapped down. This frightened the little people so much that they shot hundreds of their sharp arrows into his face. Although this hurt quite a bit, Gulliver decided to lie still and not to frighten the little people again. After a while, when they had walked all over Gulliver, they became quite brave and tried to talk to him. But the little folks spoke a different language, so Gulliver couldn't understand a single word. Somehow, their tiny emperor realized that the giant man they had captured must be very hungry by now. So he gave orders that a tall wooden platform be built to reach Gulliver's mouth. After a while, several cartloads of food and wine arrived, and hundreds of the tiny men climbed up the platform with baskets of bread and meat. The hungry Gulliver drank a whole barrel of their wine in one gulp and ate a basket full of loaves in one bite. The Lilliputians, for that is what the little people were called, kept bringing more and more until Gulliver was so full up he fell fast asleep. The little people seemed to have lost all fear of the gigantic Gulliver. So while he slept, thousands of them set to work. 500 carpenters made a platform on wheels, and 900 men hoisted the sleeping Gulliver onto it. Then with 500 guards either side, and 1,500 horses pulling hard, they began to move him towards their capital city. It took a whole day and night to reach their destination. At last, the procession came to a halt outside a large church, which was to be Gulliver's house. Although it seemed as small as a dog kennel to him, the tiny emperor of Lilliput did not intend to set Gulliver free altogether. He ordered all his blacksmiths to make a thick chain and padlock it onto Gulliver's leg so he could move around but not very far. News soon spread of the giant the emperor had captured. People flocked in from all over the land of Lilliput until the city was jammed with the little folk. 600 of them were chosen to look after Gulliver, and 400 tailors were kept busy making him new clothes. 6 of Lilliput's finest scholars were sent to teach him their language. At last the emperor could understand. Gulliver when he asked to be set free. He finally agreed on one condition. Gulliver must empty his pockets of anything that could be dangerous to Lilliput. Out came a knife, a comb, and a razor. The little people were fascinated. Then came his handkerchief, which to them looked like a carpet. His snuff box seemed like a huge chest of gunpowder. His watch made more noise than a watermill, and they thought that his purse was a fishing net. Finally, Gulliver took out his pistol and fired it into the air. So great was the noise, thousands of the little people fell flat on their backs with shock. Only the emperor stood his ground. For a man only 6 inches high, he was very brave. But even the brave emperor feared something. And one day he came to ask Gulliver's help. On the nearby island of Blefuscu lived people called the Big Indians. Their fleet of 50 ships had just set sail to invade Lilliput. What a shock to the poor Big Indian sailors got. What a shock the poor Big Indian sailors got when Gulliver waded out to sea, roped all their ships together, and dragged them back to Lilliput. It didn't take Gulliver very long to realize that the Emperor of Lilliput was only using him to fight his battle for him, and that the Big Indians were not a wicked people at all. So Gulliver made up his mind to go over to their island and live with them. He took a large warship from Lilliput, loaded it up with his clothes so they wouldn't get wet, then towed it behind him to their island of Blefuscu. He was most kindly received by the little folk, but all Gulliver really wanted was to get back to England. Quite by chance, as Gulliver was walking on the top of the cliff, he saw something floating in the sea. He could hardly believe his eyes. It was a full-size rowing boat floating upside down. Straight away, the Emperor of the Big Indians sent every ship in his fleet out to sea to tow it back to shore. It took 2,000 men to turn the boat right side up and then begin to repair it. 500 people stitched day and night to make the sails. Everyone on the island worked hard until the boat was ready. Gulliver took on board several tiny live sheep and cows to take back home. Then sadly came the time to say farewell. After only 2 days at sea, Gulliver was picked up by a sailing ship heading for England. When he told his strange story, the captain could hardly believe it until he saw the tiny cows and sheep which Gulliver placed on a table in front of him. At last, Gulliver returned home. People were delighted to welcome him back and never tired of hearing his strange story. The end. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and share. And I'll see you next time with another amazing story we read aloud together. Bye.